Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Extra History with part 4 of the Pazzi Conspiracy. This was called Well Executed. So, if you guys remember, they rounded up all the conspirators in the last part. Now, well, let's just say those conspirators are probably not going to live to see the day. Or at least the end of the day. You get me? So, yep. Might as well see what happens to everyone now. So, be sure to subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's see how this whole thing ends.
May 4th, 1478, Florence. The drum beats. An executioner steps forward with his axe. Bent over the block is the papal mercenary Montesecco. And this is a mercy. For a week since the Pazzi bungled their conspiracy to assassinate both Medici brothers, the executions have continued. But most have been hangings, a shameful punishment for men designated as criminals. Montesecco, on the other hand, is being beheaded like a man of honor. Because after he, his knights, and men were taken on the day of the Pazzi killings, he told all. He detailed the entire plot, the planning, the participants, the use of the young cardinal as bait to lure out the brothers, the early aborted attempts to murder them at a banquet, and how he had backed out of killing Lorenzo because he hadn't wanted to desecrate a church. But most of all, he publicly attests to meeting Pope Sixtus IV at the Vatican, implicating the Pope in the plot. And so, as the axe falls on Montesecco, a head rolls free, and Florence goes to war with the Pope.
Yeah, not kidding. I'm honestly not surprised.
Thanks so much to Nebula for continuing to be the best deal in streaming. Kick off your new year right by treating yourself to their ad-free goodness, where you can also see extra histories 1 week early using our discount code below.
Though, let's be real. Like, I think he knew his options. Like, he was gonna end dead either way, so might as well just get it off his chest and be like, okay, yeah, I was involved, but I didn't want to do it, and the Pope's involved, so can you give me a beheading? Thank you. Yeah, honestly, if I was in his shoes, I'd probably saw the Pope too. No wonder they went to war. Like, pretty sure if that happened nowadays, I don't think the Pope would last long, you know? Oh boy. Anyway, let's just see what happens to Sixtus.
Executions followed daily after the Pazzi conspiracy, as did extrajudicial killings by the mob. The only respite came on April 29th, the day before Giuliano's funeral. Normally, prominent Medici were given their funerals at the Florence Cathedral, the church they'd most put their stamp on via artistic patronage. But this, of course, was inappropriate given he'd been mercilessly killed there. It was the beginning of a push by Lorenzo to use religious imagery and donations to cast his slain brother as almost saint-like, a martyr who had died for Florence's salvation. In the years ahead, he would donate large sums to local churches and religious institutions, expanding their previously minor Feast of the 10,000 Martyrs to an entire week, one dedicated in honor of Lorenzo's dead brother, father, and mother. And the Medici needed that touch of divinity for sure, because the exposing of the Pazzi conspiracy started a literal war with Pope Sixtus. What really set Sixtus off were the killings. The executions continued into October, hanging after bloody hanging, and he was horrified at how the mob had spiked heads and strewn body parts in the streets. Though this was all secondary to the thing he was most furious about, the execution of Archbishop Salviati. First of all, he'd personally mentored Salviati. Second, at the time, priests possessed a right known as the benefit of clergy, which exempted them from execution. So to Sixtus, his hanging was an affront to church power. And third, the humiliating method of his death was unbecoming for a church official. The Medici
Yeah, honestly, you probably shouldn't have backed the conspiracy, buddy. You kind of did that yourself. Oh boy. Man, what's to show you? Sometimes even religious higher-ups can be corrupt. Since when did that benefit of clergy that supposedly saves you from execution? Yeah, When you're going after prominent family members, that's off the table, man. Yeah, you kind of did that to your boy, Sixtus. You kind of did that to yourself. Anyway.
Countered by arguing that Salviati and the other priests involved had forfeited their benefit of clergy, since the conspiracy was not in their official roles as priests, and that they had betrayed their vows by trying to carry out violence in a church. Where even murderers and thieves found sanctuary on holy ground, they argued, the Medici had only found murder. Pope Sixtus retaliated by excommunicating Lorenzo and the entire Medici family, but when this did not have the desired effect of destroying his base of support in Florence, his follow-up was a doozy. He excommunicated the entire city a collective punishment for its campaign of street violence. Though this did not go as Sixtus intended. See, by that time, Lorenzo had made Montesecco's confession public, and published it along with a theological defense of Florence. There was already a perception that Sixtus was more of a political figure rather than a religiously focused pope, and his flagrant promotion of his relatives had made him a lot of enemies. Now, in addition to being implicated in a political attack on Florence, one that was arguably sacrilegious, he was following up by attacking the city with religious threats of damnation. So Florence quickly found allies. The most prominent was King Louis XI of France, who was already kind of looking for a reason to have it out with Sixtus, and found the excommunication of Florence an excellent pretext. Soon, Florence had formed a league along with France, Milan, Venice, and Bologna, and engaged in a multi-year war with Sixtus and his allies. Like many Renaissance Italian wars, however, this did not necessarily involve a lot of large-scale battles. It was fought with mercenaries and involved a lot of maneuver, positioning, and politics. But what it was expensive. And the Medici coffers were already drained from generations of art patronage and bad loans. Meanwhile, in Florence, Lorenzo was ensuring that no one would follow the Pazzi's path again. It started with a campaign of damnatio memoria, erasing the Pazzi from history. The Pazzi Palace, already ransacked by mobs and its assets seized by the Medici, was torn down brick by brick. All instances of the Pazzi family crest with its 2 dolphins was either painted over or chiseled out. Those Pazzi men who survived the massacres and executions were exiled, with their extended relatives never allowed public office in Florence. And Lorenzo even intervened in the marriages of Pazzi daughters, ensuring they always married below their station and would never rise as a family again. Even Lorenzo's own brother-in-law, who had thrown up his hands during the attack and denied all knowledge and complicity, was sent to live outside the city. The Medici also retaliated in their favorite medium, art. Lorenzo commissioned a ceiling fresco in City Hall depicting the hanging of the Pazzi conspirators, so no one would forget what happened to those who crossed the Medici. Fittingly, the artist he chose for this was Botticelli, who had painted the banner Giuliano carried in the tournament only a few years before, when the future still seemed full of promise. Which is a pretty amazing flex, right? Don't cross the Medici, because we're gonna kill you, but then we'll also hire a Renaissance master to paint a picture of your corpse. Brutal.
Yeah, that does sound all right.
Botticelli was not the only artist who would depict a Pazzi hanging. December 29th, 1479. Leonardo da Vinci sketches the man. The downward tilt on his head on a broken neck, the sunken eyes, the neutral expression on his dead face. He also pays attention to the clothes, not only drawing the style, but carefully noting the material of each garment and how much it cost. Da Vinci finds the clothes so artistically interesting because they're Turkish, and the man is Benigni, the last of the assassins from the cathedral. He had returned to Florence in chains as a gift from the Ottoman Sultan. Turns out after the plot's failure, he fled to Constantinople, only for Medici diplomats to track him down and negotiate his return. He's been convicted, paraded through the streets, and finally executed in the Turkish-style clothes he'd been arrested in. A clear and specific message that there is nowhere you can run where Medici justice will not find you. The final plotters met bad ends on their own as well. Pope Sixtus died from illness in 1484. Girolamo Riario, the last survivor, was himself assassinated in an unrelated financial dispute almost exactly 10 years after Giuliano's death. Lorenzo's vengeance was complete. Yet only a year after Giuliano's assassination, there would again be whispers in Florence. After all, the Medici's political system partially used to work because they manipulated the Republic's government behind the scenes, but the ruthless crackdowns of the Pazzi have exposed the reality. The Republic is a sham, and it serves as an instrument of the Medici. The Pazzi conspiracy left the Medici weakened and exposed. Even when Lorenzo ended the war with Sixtus through clever diplomacy, a personal diplomatic mission to the King of Naples, the consequences were far-reaching. Namely, Naples would be increasingly able to exert power over Medici rule in Florence. Yet there was one small consolation, quite literally small. After Giuliano's death, Lorenzo learned that his brother had fathered a child with a mistress, his only living offspring. Overjoyed that his brother had a son, and he a nephew, Lorenzo took the boy in and raised him like one of his own children. And when the time came, he set him up with a good career in the church. In fact, the son of Giuliano Medici, a man killed in a cathedral during High Mass, would become Clement VII, the first Medici to become Pope, a fitting symbolic revenge against Sixtus. But that was in the future, and the Medici's troubles were not over. Indeed, over the course of Lorenzo's life, as his fortunes fell both literally and figuratively, as Florence became less controllable and kings defaulted on their loans, he would increasingly look back on that day of false smiles and bloodshed at the altar as a turning point. The moment when the glorious Medici drank the red wine of treachery, and where for even Lorenzo the Magnificent, the future would never look so glorious again. Yet he would live on, and this would not be Lorenzo's last crisis. So, come back next week for a coda of sorts, a story about the end of Lorenzo's life and his involvement with a dangerous firebrand monk who swayed crowds to expel the Medici and start a bonfire of the vanities. The most infamous preacher in Italian history, Savonarola. Heck yeah. And you can continue.
Well, sounds like we got one more to go. The bonfire of the vanity. The Vanity? I don't know. We'll go with that. So, one more to this story, and I guess we'll stop and things with a bonfire. Literally watching the world burn, or in this case, the Medici world burn. Anyway, till next time. See ya.